Okay, good day everyone. Welcome to Philosophy Online Lecture. Today we are on philosophy, language, and communication. And our topic for today is the idea of conceptual scheme. So we are going to be looking at what a conceptual scheme is or conceptual framework, and then we are going to be looking at a philosopher view on conceptual scheme. So and to put it simply, conceptual scheme are those principles at which we give meaning to things. Now, a conceptual scheme could be to what you've experienced, and that experience now help guide you in how you give meaning to other things that relate to church experience. And then a conceptual scheme could be what the principles which our religion has laid down, or politics, or education, or you got through education, or you got through your family, and then or through your culture. Now every culture in the world has their own conceptual scheme, and that is why you see the views of the Igbo people on a particular subject is different from the views of the Yorubas on that same subject, and different from the views of the Awusas, and different from the views of people in Brazil, and different from the views of people in Portugal, because every culture has people are who have experienced various aspects of the universe. You know, we are in one universe, but everyone has experienced various aspects of the universe. The way in which we communicate with our physical and non-physical environment influences us in how we give meaning to things actually. So definitely having different cultures in the world uh, means everyone has seen the world from different lens. Now, uh, so that is why we say every culture have their own conceptual scheme. Now, the concept uh, uh, of each culture enables that culture to do what, to structure and explain everything else they needed to ensure their survival. Now, this is not only in terms of their basic biosocial needs like necessities of food, clothing, and shelter, but also their cultural needs like the need for social and cultural identity. You see some people saying that, okay, I am a Nigerian and this is what I understand in being a Nigerian, and so I want to do this and or do that, or I will do this or do that because of my experience or my idea of being a Nigerian. Now it also goes further to uh, creating a structure for their physical need, that is the need for self-dignity, sexual expression, and then human communication. Okay, so to it is the conceptual framework that distinguish one culture from another, like I said before, and to a large extent, it gives such a culture a cultural perception of the universe that is different from others. So that is why you see that the views of each culture is different. Now, so what can we say a conceptual scheme is? Now, like I said before, it is the principle at which you give meaning to things. Now, we could also say it is that it implies giving the organized conceptual framework which a culture or an individual has developed from their confrontation with the universe. That is, it is the framework which a culture or an individual has developed from their confrontation with the universe, and the other experiences and circumstances they confront are made meaningful to this existing framework. That is, you already have an organized conceptual framework as an individual or as a culture, and it is this culture that now lays down the guide of other experiences or situations that you might find yourself in, and it is through this existing framework that you're now going to give meaning to those new experiences and beliefs or thoughts. Now let me give an instance. Now, for example, if you get a certificate in philosophy department, spending 4 years in philosophy department, you are going to get a conceptual framework of the culture of philosophy, and that is what is going to guide you in how you approach things. Now, for example, when someone gives you an idea, like five of you an idea, others who do not study philosophy will just might just accept that idea, but you, as one who has studied philosophy, you have that notion, that concept, that ideas must be questioned. And so you question those ideas and ask about the rationality of those ideas, because you have that experience uh, through studying philosophy, and that guides you in how you approach other things in life. Now this applies to every facet of life, so that is the basic meaning of what a conceptual framework is. Now, having having said that, okay, let's take a look at a philosophical argument for conceptual scheme, and we're going to be using that of Immanuel Kant. Now, Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher, and he was one of the first to bring about the idea of conceptual scheme, and he did this because he wanted to study what we as humans can know and what we can't know. And this was because he was trying to respond to the arguments between the empiricists and the rationalists. The empiricists saying that you can only get knowledge through human experience, what you see through sense perception, and the rationalists saying that you can get knowledge through reason, right? So he was trying to respond. So he was actually trying to study what we can know as humans and what we can't know. Now, he said that the only word we can know, the only word that is WORLD that we can know as humans, is that word that is constituted by the human mind, that word that is created by the human mind, and that in which we do not we cannot see through the human mind, that is through our experiences, that word is impossible for us to know. Now the word that we can know through our human mind are those things, those physical things that we can see, the word of material, like the word of trees and stones, rain, clouds, lions, shells, and so on, that we are already used to. Now, the knowledge that we have now can't go beyond this world that is constituted by the human mind. Now, according to Immanuel Kant, so he's saying that that is what you can know, and he's also saying that the human experience is already structured through space and time. Now, I need you to be calm here. Now, our world is already structured through space and time. Now, this space and time, they are not, they are independent of the human experiences. Now, that is, uh, they are not part of our experiences. They are categories that are not part of our experiences but are independent of our experiences. Now, it is that space and time that are those ingredients that uh, help us to do what, to help us view things now, and help us uh, determine the way those things appear to our senses. Now, what is saying basically here is that the world we see now, like things you see, they are already defined to space and time. Now, space and time are not part of our human experiences. They are what decide what appear to our senses. So when we want to talk about uh, the world, we are not going to talk about okay. Okay, so let me get this now. Now, this would therefore imply that the world, as it is independent of our experiences, should be distinguished from the world as we experience it. That is, the world that is independent of our experiences, that is space and time, right? That are not part of our experiences, should be distinguished from the world as we experience it. That is, those things we can see, those things we are familiar with, those things we can relate with as humans, right? Now, so this is the basis, this is the what we can use to say that we know things, right? It is only the world as we experience through the categories of the space and time which help us make those things appear to our senses, that we can say that we truly know, right? The world as we can experience it. Now, that is the first part of the argument. Now, is he now said in the second part that, you see, what we claim to know, that is those words as we experience it, what we claim to know are not the true, the real knowledge. Now, he's saying that this because that the mind, whenever the mind perceives things, it doesn't, the mind just take those things passively, like in a flash. Like, for example, now you forget your purse somewhere, you know, and you have been to like three places. Then you start, where do I, where you are trying to figure out, your mind is giving you a picture, but you can't actually figure out where that picture and where that situation actually happened, right? So the mind just collects things in a in a flash at first, right? That is what the mind does. So we can't claim that those things are true knowledge. But what we can only call them what, the raw knowledge, the raw knowledge. Now, it is this raw knowledge that, okay, or let's say the raw materials. Now, it is these raw materials that we now have to do what, to convert into knowledge. That is those things that we picture in a flash, right? That we now have to convert into knowledge. And this, for this to be done, the mind has to be committed to it. That is, to be active in trying out, in trying to do what, to confront those raw materials, right? So the mind has to be active and calm in the converting those raw materials into knowledge. And how does the mind do this? It is through imposing on it various divisions, classifications, and various kind of orderings. Now, the mind now has to group these raw materials, group them, so that each can have a kind of ordering, a kind of meaning. Now, so the mind achieve this ordering, right, by of the raw materials of the senses, right? It achieve it through the application of concepts. So the mind now apply concepts to these various notions, and these various raw materials rather. Now, for example, the first time in which you see people um, kicking a ball, right? Uh, then you another place you see two people running. Now that is just a picture, right? You don't have an idea if those things are sports. Now you now group those things into various categories. Now you now say, okay, this for two people to be competing for this thing, that means these things are games, right? So when you the first time you see someone beating someone, right, and then in another place you see two people fighting, then that is the picture. Then you now convert it into the knowledge that this is what we see as inequality. She gets now. Do you now attach a concept to those things? Now, Kant went further by saying that this concept could be a priori or a posteriori. Now, okay, let me see what a priori is. A priori are statements of like facts, right? And then they are known independent of human experiences. That is, you don't have to experience it or or seek for it to know about it or question it to know that it is true. Like definitions, like biology is the study of the human body. We know that that is what biology is, right? It's different from when they say uh, the water is cold, right? For someone to say the water is cold, you can't believe it immediately until you taste it. So a priori are those things that we know independent of human experiences. That is, you don't have to experience it. Why a posteriori are those things you have to know through experience. Now, for those things you have to know through experience, there is no problem with that. Okay, so you have to confirm it. A priori, on the other hand, are uh, a priori are those uh, preconditions for human experience and knowledge. So it is this a priori concepts that act as this systemizing framework for the disorderly impression of the senses. Now, it is this a priori, this thing that this knowledge that are independent of human experiences, that doesn't need experience to define, that are now this that act as those framework, those classification framework, those conceptual framework, right, for those disorderly impressions that we got from our mind that were not well structured, that we just got through a flash. It is this a priori that now give that now does what that give a systemizing framework to them. Okay, so I hope that is clear now. From this now, we can now see that everyone confronts the universe and acquire the knowledge of what is in the universe through a conceptual scheme or a conceptual framework, right? And then this also implies that the conceptual scheme that we have developed, right, stand between us and the universe as we know it. That is, whatever we understand about the universe, right, is due to our conceptual scheme about it, right? So in other words, we can only manage knowledge of the world as it is presented to us through those conceptual categories that we have established. That is, we can only know things, we can only have ideas about things through the already established conceptual framework. Okay, so now, Immanuel Kant, however, said that everybody, right, everybody on earth share a universal conceptual scheme which allows us to see the world as it is. That is, he's saying that in spite of our cultural differences, that is, we are capable of seeing the world through a from the world from a particular angle, right? So, or that is what Kant is saying, that everyone has a universal conceptual scheme that applies to everybody. But some scholars now say that if you say everyone has a universal conceptual scheme, then why do we have different cultures in the world with people having different views? So that assumption is inconsistent because of the cultural diversities in the world. So that is what that was the response to Immanuel Kant, and one of those who responded to him was Gottfried Eder, right? Okay, so he's saying that what makes a culture strange to us in the first place is that culture has its own conceptual scheme that is different from ours. While we see the Americans practicing homosexuality freely, and we see that strange to us, is because their own conceptual scheme is different from ours. We see that as being wrong, they see it as being right, right? And so uh, that is that on actually on Immanuel Kant, on the idea of conceptual scheme. Okay, so it is although this conceptual scheme brought out arguments with relativism, that is the idea of can we actually make claims about other culture, is culture relative, are those conceptual scheme, are they relative, or they are in a general instance? But that is not our concern for now. We just we have fulfilled and our idea of what conceptual scheme is, and that is the major point, that on conceptual scheme, and in Immanuel Kant's view on what conceptual schemes are. So thank you so much for listening, and in the next online videos, we are going to be discussing four values in effective communication. Once again, thank you so much for listening.